one of my favorite recipes that uses one of my favorite mushrooms, which makes this maybe one of my favorite recipes ever, probably. It uses the lobster mushroom, or I don't know, like it's still a mushroom, right? It's like a this parasitic like fungi takes over this other mushroom, turns it bright orange, makes it smell like lobster, makes it kind of taste like lobster even. Oh, like the texture is not gonna be just like lobster, but when you put it into this lobster mushroom bisque, it's incredible. It's so good. And I've been plant-based for many years, like over 15 years, 16 years. Lobster was one of my favorite foods. It was like a family tradition for us to have lobster at like the holidays, or if it's like a birthday or something. So when I first got into like foraging and mushrooms, and I learned about this mushroom, I got really excited. And if you are plant-based and you like the taste of seafood, you need to try this mushroom. I'm gonna warn you, it is kind of expensive. Like it really depends on like the vendor you go to. So at the farmer's market last week, I live in Washington, and I was able to find it for like $18 a pound. But then I went to Pike Place, and the vendors were selling these for like $20 a pound. So yeah, it's a little expensive, and the main reason why these guys are so expensive is that they cannot be grown. They have to be foraged. So that is another reason to go out in nature and experiment with foraging if you haven't yet. I have yet to find these on my own in the wild, but it's not stopping me from making recipes like this. I was like, this soup is so good. Like, oh my God. So the first step for making this like lobster mushroom bisque is we're going to make an infused lobster mushroom oil. And this infused oil is just gonna go directly into the soup, and there'll be a little bit left over too for any other recipes that you want to use it for. It honestly, like the infused lobster oil smells so good. Let me grab it for you so you know what we're making. So this is some leftover infused oil that I made a few days ago, and seriously, look at this bright orange color. This only has 3 ingredients. So this is just a start. It's literally just coconut oil, the lobster scraps that we're gonna be cleaning, and a little bit of salt. So to make the scraps, we're gonna be grabbing, I don't know, you see like these kind of like brown bits? Like we kind of just wanna grab all the bits that just doesn't look the greatest, because we're not going to be eating these directly. What we are going to be doing though is cooking them in the oil and straining it, so we're not going to actually be eating this part. And what's really nice is you can save all these scraps after you're done even making the oil and add it to your favorite vegetable broth, and it makes your vegetable broth taste so good. Like I'm obsessed with making homemade vegetable broth, so I'll have like put a little link in the bio of like how I make homemade vegetable broth using like vegetable scraps, it's super easy, and it really like can transform any of your soups or recipes that you use. So we're just gonna clean this all up, and once we're done cleaning, we want to have like about half a cup worth of these mushroom scraps. I am like seriously hoping that I find some lobster mushrooms this weekend. I am going foraging, and I think it's gonna be super fun. I'm gonna be looking for, when I'm foraging for these, are obviously these like bright orange things popping out of the ground. So they grow out of the ground like upright like that, and they like to grow near like conifers trees, so piney looking trees. And they like Washington, they like the whole Pacific Northwest, and they like the Rocky Mountains. And I was told that if you find lobster mushrooms, chanterelles are also nearby, which are another fabulous gourmet mushroom. If you have not tried it, you need to, because it tastes so good. Whereas these kind of taste like seafood and lobster, chanterelles, on the other hand, taste like apricots. And they're like a nuttier version of an apricot, but also like a little milder, but very delicious. So if you've already cleaned everything and you're not quite at half a cup, just keep going and just try to find what you can, so that way it adds up to half a cup. Because what we really want is like a 50-50 blend of like oil to mushrooms, so that way it's like a really strong flavored oil, and it really makes like the soup pop. So now we're going to be melting our butter. I am using Earth Balance because, just like the Black Forager says, I'm a filthy vegan. So right now I'm just going to be melting this up, and then from there we're going to be adding the lobster scraps. So let's melt. Okay, that's melted enough. So I'm gonna add all of the lobster mushroom scraps. Oop. A little stir. It's part of making this. So we have our infused butter / oil, whatever you choose to do, going, and now we're gonna start chopping up an onion. This recipe is super simple, where we're literally just gonna be chopping up one small onion, and like maybe this is like small-ish, like medium small, you know, like whatever you would consider this. I would consider this like small to medium. Anyways, and then you're gonna do 2 cloves of garlic, and yeah, it's very, very simple. Also, when you're chopping like your mushroom, or you know, obviously like we have these like broken up mushrooms, they don't need to be like any particular size, they don't need to be super big, super small. We really just want it to cook pretty evenly. Like it'll be fine. Everything's gonna get blended up, so you don't need to worry about it being like having big chunks of whatever. I know there's like a ton of memes out there that are like, oh, finally a recipe that says 2 cloves of garlic, and then they show like this giant hunk of garlic like this big. Now, as tempting as it would be to like use something like that or go extra on the garlic, you just don't want to do it, because it's the same reason why we don't have a ton of vegetables in this recipe. You don't want the garlic to overpower everything. That can easily happen. It's like I'm a girl who loves her garlic. I love garlic, but I really don't want it overpowered. Our vegetables chopped. We have our lobster mushroom oil or butter, whatever you choose, going. Now it is time to make the rest of the soup. So I am going to be using my Instapot just to speed things up. If you want to do it over the stove, do it. The main difference is like you're gonna need to cook it on the stove for 1 hour, and if you use an Instapot, it only needs 20 minutes. So totally up to you. Whatever you have, use what is at your disposal. So let's go. I'm going to turn my Instapot on the saute function for like, I'm only going to do it for like 10 minutes. I honestly just want to get it so that way these onions get like cooked and transparent. I've noticed that if you don't pre-cook your onions, they don't get as sweet, and we really want to like bring out like the sweetness that's in the lobster mushrooms, because it really helps it taste more lobster-y, if that makes sense. Like lobster's not necessarily sweet, but there's like notes of it, like elements of it, you know what I mean? Anyways, I forgot to grab my butter. So what we need right now is about 2 tablespoons worth of butter. You can also use coconut oil. Honestly, just because I have this, I'm gonna use some of this infused lobster mushroom butter that I made the other day from the first time I made this recipe, just because like, oh, I wish I could send you smells. Like, it smells so good. Man, I don't know how it got this pattern. Like, can you see that? Like, it just like melted like that. It's really cool. Anyways, so I'm gonna get a tablespoon of that. Like I said, just use like regular oil or butter if you have it. I'm only using my lobster butter just because I have it. Honestly, like, you are gonna love, like, with this recipe, you're gonna have some leftover lobster mushroom butter or oil or whatever, and it's so good. It's like one of my favorite parts of this whole recipe is just the leftover oil. Add these. Now I like to cook my onions for a little bit longer than my garlic, just because the garlic will like lose some of its flavor if you cook it at the same exact time, so I just think it's better. Also, just like check out the color that you get when you use the infused lobster oil. Like, I just can't even get over it. It kind of like acts like saffron with that orange hue. And then, like, even right now, I'm getting that lobster smell, and it's so good. Oh, so good. It's like if seafood didn't taste oceany, if that makes sense. All right, so the garlic doesn't need to go nearly as long as the onions, so now I'm just gonna add these guys. Have 4 cups of prepared broth, use that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna use some no chicken bouillon. I found that the plant-based chicken flavor goes really, really well with lobster flavors, which I'm pretty sure is even what's in a traditional lobster bisque is actual chicken broth. However, if you want, you could totally use plant-based like seafood kind of broth. Miyoko's has some really good recipes in her cookbook for one of those, but I personally like the richness that the plant-based chicken adds. I'm just using this stuff, just what I have. So I found that if you do a full tablespoon to 4 cups, it makes all the broth that you need, and it's really easy, pretty convenient. So I'm just adding a full tablespoon to one of the cups, and then add 3 more cups of water. That's gonna be really intense. A lid on it. There we go. All right, got the lid on it. Pressure cook for 20 minutes, as promised, how the broth is going. So now we are at the point to make some roux. Let's make some roux, guys, which is pretty much just cream and flour. So what I'm using is a can of coconut milk. I have some left over from, honestly, when I made this recipe like 2 days ago. So I'm taking some of my leftover coconut oil, and I'm gonna be doing a 1/3 cup. Well, the recipe is like 8 tablespoons, so it's really a 1/3 cup and 2 tablespoons. So let's just do it this way, just because it's a little bit easier to get accurate. So let's do this on, I don't know, medium-low heat. I don't want it too hot. It's about a 1/3 cup of flour, and then we're going to strain out our infused lobster oil that we made here, and we're going to do a 1/3 cup of that, and that's really going to bring out like that really rich lobster mushroom flavor. Just strained out and measured a 1/3 cup. I'm gonna add this. There we go. Oh wow, look at that orange color. And it really does smell like lobster. It's so good. All right, so since we just strained all of our lobster mushrooms, I'm gonna add it to my vegetable scrap jar. I always keep a frozen jar of veggie scraps, so that way when I wanna make vegetable broth, it is really easy. And honestly, like, this is gonna make some fantastic soups, like other soups in the future. Instapot is done. let it steam. So now we are going to blend it up. You can either pour it into a blender, food processor, or use an immersion blender. I think this is the easiest way to go. They're pretty inexpensive too. So literally just gonna... The last step is to add a 1/4 cup of white wine. Now make sure that your wine is vegan by going on the website barnivore.com. So a lot of wines will have non-vegan ingredients like gelatin or like, I can't remember how this is pronounced, begins with an IS, it's like isl something. Anyways, it's like fish bladders. Like there's just some weird stuff in wine. So I just want to double check that. Make sure it doesn't need anything. Oh my god. This is so good. It's like, it's so buttery and creamy. Like, wow. Like I feel like when I'm sipping this, it reminds me of when I was younger and I used to eat shrimp scampi, but like if this could be like the butter, the garlic butter that the shrimp scampi was cooking in, like that's what this reminds me of. It's so rich, it's so good. Like you definitely get those seafood flavors, but I don't know, it's not like oceany, you know what I mean? Like you don't taste algae, you don't taste, it's not salty at all. It's really good. Oh, wow. So now I'm gonna have my husband, Liam, who does not like mushrooms and he does not like seafood, and see what he thinks of this lobster mushroom bisque. I'm
ready.
Gonna try it, let me know what you think.
Oh yeah. So like, do I just like drink it or like?
Oh my god, with a lot of confidence. Well, I mean, I guess I did make it the other day.
Yeah, that's
this is just fresh. This is for you guys.
I was gonna say it's a secret. That's so good. Oh my god.